This is me playing you now, asking me a question.
Let's go for it.
Hello, Jason. No.
Give us a hi, guys.
Hi, guys.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you be Jason, I'll be Milo.
For sure.
Yeah.
Fog rolling in.
Yes, you're correct. You're not wrong here. Your eyes do not deceive you. That was a clip from an unreleased Jason Blundell interview that I found on this hard drive this morning. Would you guys be interested in seeing the full uncut thing? Leave a like if you would. I can't quite believe it either, but we're going to use this as an opportunity to A, show you more clips from that and a full nostalgia montage at the end of this video, so make sure you stick around. But B, also, we're going to be diving into what the implications are for Treyarch that Jason Blundell has moved on now. This is something that I think I've got a really unique perspective on. I mean, you guys saw how Jason and I interacted over the years. Like, this wasn't just like an IGN going in, getting a 5-minute soundbite and then leaving again. We talked a lot about his passions, about zombies, about his work, about life, about what I was up to. There was a huge amount of ground that we covered. And so today, I think it's about time I address all of that properly for the first time since he left. Tell you guys the truth about what's been going on and the implications for the future. Jason was obviously integral to so much of zombies, whether it's the storyline, whether it's the gameplay, whether it's Easter eggs and more. And so him not being there anymore is going to have consequences, and we're going to talk about all of that. Speaking of Easter eggs, though, really important question here from the sponsor of today's video, Manscaped. They wanted me to ask you, have you been taking care of your Easter eggs recently? Or is your elemental staff guide starting to fill up with nonsense? You know what I'm saying? Like, is that frozen forest driving you nuts? Have you been really having a hard time finding those gobblegums recently? If that's the case, then there is a solution. It's called the Lawnmower 3.0 from manscaped.com. It's got a 7,000 RPM motor, which spins faster than the hard drive in your grandma's PC, and advanced skin-safe technology to make sure that you don't glitch out your game and blue screen your boozax. The lawnmower is a specialist weapon designed to solve any puzzle you throw at it. In fact, Manscaped have actually put together a perfect package for you guys, which contains the Lawnmower 3.0, Crop Reviver, Crop Preserver, and a fancy pair of boxers. So if you're worried about corruption from the dark ether, this is the package to go for. There's links to manscaped.com in the description. You need to use code WAFFLES at checkout and you'll get 20% off, free international shipping, a couple of free gifts, and hell, I'll sleep better at night knowing that you guys are taking care of your Easter eggs. With that very important public service announcement out of the way, we're going to be switching back to super serious mode. I don't want to see a single one of you jokers making funnies in the comment section, okay? And let's start by talking about how Jason Blundell's Easter eggs have impacted the zombies community over the years, because I really want to convey just how important I feel that Jason was in the kind of machine of Treyarch that was pumping out content for us map after map after map through all those different games. Jason joined the zombies team, as I understand it, back on Doriz, and so he had seen it all. He had seen the first actual doable Easter egg in Ascension. He had seen the earlier Easter eggs in Shinonuma that were just radios. He'd seen the story emerge from the audio team initially in World at War, and how that then blossomed into its own fully fledged story that was organically progressing under the helm of Jimmy Zielinski. He had seen all of that, and he'd continued his tenure through to being creative director and at one point co-studio head, and in that position overseen the entirety of development on Treyarch Call of Duties, but obviously focused on Mob of the Dead, Origins, Shadows, The Giant, Horizon, Zetsubo, Garrod, Revelations, that entire crazy arc we got in BO3, and more than in BO4, although his role in BO4 did change, and we'll talk about that too in a moment. He basically, and I'm not exaggerating here, knew everything that he needed to know, or that there was to know, about zombies as a mode. I, in conversations with Jason, brought up things that no one had ever talked about with him before. I could tell because he was always like, Milo, I thought the community had forgotten about that genuinely like 10 years ago. What are you talking about? But he knew what I was referring to nearly every time, and if not, he knew the people that he needed to speak to at Treyarch to get the information to then relay it back to the community and get answers out there. The amount of fan service he did in BO3 and even in BO4 was something that I feel like only he could or would have necessarily done, because it was really important to him to honor all those old bits of information that people had forgotten about. That was one of his ways of really showing the depth of his kind of passion for the zombies mode. And granted, I'm not saying that this was a one-man effort. I'm simply saying that the way it worked at Treyarch is that things in zombies would always go across Jason's desk. They always would. And so he was the one green-lighting everything or red-lighting that was going into the game or not. And as such, the results that we saw, the maps that we played, were all, in part, every element of those, something that Jason Blundell had said, yes, this is the right call here, or no, it's not, and thus it's not going to be in the game. Now this, to be totally honest with you guys, had pros and it had cons. The pros are evident from the decisions that were made over the years and the creative genius behind some of the maps that we saw released. I mean, I think none of us are going to argue that like Der Eisen is a terrible map or it's not what the community wanted at the time or what have you, because it was a masterpiece. It just was, and it is today. But on the flip side, there were areas where I think Jason was very, very confident in the decisions that he was making. He had to be the leader of the ship in that sense, but that meant that when there were areas that could have done with changing, I think that it was maybe less likely that he would have been tuned into those because of the fact that he was so busy steering the ship forward in this incredibly well-defined direction that I feel like he had in his head. The example of this that you guys are probably most familiar with, because I've talked about it the most publicly, is the communication thing at the start of BO4. So the TLDR here, because this is just sort of water under the bridge at this point, it's not worth going back into in super depth, is that prior to BO4, obviously zombies had been very cryptic in everything that ever happened. That was just the Treyarch way. And I think in a lot of ways, that was exactly what Jason liked. He liked the crypticness. He was the one that was obsessed with all those ciphers over the years. He was the one that would say pass or train every 5 seconds when we were doing our lightning round rather than just giving me answers, which he was totally justified to do. I'm not complaining about that by any means, don't worry. And then in the build up to BO4, I spoke with Jason multiple times in interviews on and off the record, and I said to him, I think it would be really cool, and I said this with JC as well at the BO4 launch event, to get a little bit more communication this year and just to have a little bit more of an open relationship with the community. I think that that would really be healthy for the game, and I think that the community were really hopeful for something like that at that point as well. And then the game came out, it was on kind of bumpy ground, but it was very difficult for us to get the communication that I think at that point much of the community was actually expecting and really, really hopeful for. And I'm sure there were loads of factors in there that I couldn't possibly ever know, because at the end of the day, I'm just like armchair video game critic who isn't making the video game. I don't know the nitty-gritty details with Activision and their policy and how they're moderating what Treyarch's doing and blah, blah, blah. But in my understanding, Jason really felt like that old model would still be the best option, right? And so those sorts of things are areas where I think Jason's like massive expertise in zombies and massive history with the mode was a blessing and a curse. Like, it had those pros and cons, like I said. The pros were massive, massive pros, though. I don't want to downplay those. The energy, for instance, in the interviews that I did with Jason, and don't get me wrong, I massively respect and loved interviewing Lee Ross, Cameron Dayton, like, those guys did fantastic work, don't get me wrong here, but just the energy in the interviews, just something about the way that we would talk about zombies with Jason, I think it showed his passion. It showed the fact that he was a fan, at the end of the day, of this crazy thing that he had had a hand in building. That passion, to me, was like one of a kind. And what I mean by that is that I've interviewed dozens of developers at dozens of studios over the years. I've been doing this 11 years, you guys. And so when I say it's one of a kind, I mean there's never been another person that I've interviewed in the industry that has just given off that kind of passion for what he was doing and had the depth of knowledge that Jason did. There's just not been one. And for that, I mean, I've got to salute the guy. Like, genuinely, he was clearly so good at what he was doing, and I've got to give him some respect for that. The montage at the end of this video shows all of this off, I think, really well. You can just tell from literally like a 1.5-minute montage that there was something special about that guy in the way that he was doing his job. There really was. The storyline is another area where I'm really uncertain how losing Jason's influence is going to affect things. Obviously, Craig Houston is still the lead writer. Thank goodness, what a legend Craig Houston is for still being there after all this time, but Jason was integral to that process, and he also contributed massively to things like the comic as well. And so again, I'm just sort of a little tentative and hesitant and intrigued and curious and mystified and worried and all those things about how the story is going to develop now that Jason is gone. So Jason, a message for you on the off chance you're watching this video, seeing as this is the first time I've commented on the fact that you've left. I just want to say thank you, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, for changing my life. And that's not an exaggeration, that's not hyperbole. Not only the work that you did in the game, but outside it as well, just the advice that you gave me when we were chatting over coffee. I mean, like, genuinely, it's been incredibly impactful for me, and I just want to say thank you, honestly. And I'm really, really looking forward to hopefully in the future seeing you work on another title somewhere else maybe, or just, I don't know, whatever you get up to next. I'm looking forward to it. So, sort of wiping the tears from my eyes, the question is, can Treyarch survive without the guy? One of the people we see in the reveal for D Machine is Corky Lemcool. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. Corky has been at Treyarch for donkey's years, okay? And I'm just gonna rattle off a couple of the things that Corky's worked on to give you an idea of why you should care about the fact that he is being spotlighted as someone that might now be taking the helm of zombies and filling the role that Jason left vacant. Corky worked on Black Ops 1, but that's not really the exciting thing here. Corky also worked on Black Ops 2, but specifically in Black Ops 2, he worked on Mob of the Dead. And then Corky worked on Origins, and then Corky worked on Der Eisen, and then he worked on Gorod Krovi, and then he worked on Revelations. Guys, what an incredible list of maps to be able to highlight and pull out and say, yeah, I worked on all of those at Treyarch when I was working on the zombies mode. In my opinion, that's pretty damn promising. And it wasn't just working on it as like someone in QA, maybe like an animator, maybe a level designer. No, okay? Corky was leading teams here. He was high up the food chain. In fact, I remember distinctly Jason telling me that Corky was the one that was basically in charge entirely of Gorod Krovi. He was the map director for that map. The way they did it in BO3 is that they split up different maps to have different map directors, and then those map directors all reported to Jason at the top. And Corky's kind of child, I suppose, was Gorod Krovi. I think that he was also very up that chain for DE as well, as I understand things. And I also know, this is a really random fact, the poster for Gorod Krovi, like that art, that painting, is his work. So this is a talented guy. And not only was he creative directing, in that time he was also doing writing work as well. He has writing credits, so that sounds very much like the sort of thing Jason would have been doing in the past, doing a little bit of writing, but also doing some creative direction, bringing those two worlds together in an overarching oversight kind of role. And now Corky is working on D Machine. And in my opinion, he is one of the only people that I would trust to create a zombies experience that really speaks to the fans, that innovates in the ways that need to be innovated, while also honoring the past and honoring the systems that we all know and love. And it's comforting too, knowing that with my interviews with Jason over the years, like yes, we had our actual interviews and I posted them on YouTube, stuff like that, but there was a huge amount of time where we were just chatting about stuff. And in all those conversations, he only ever had good things to say about Corky. So if he's good enough for Jason, I think he's got to be good enough for me, right? So Corky, speaking to you now, I'm so excited to see what you've got up your sleeve. Show us your best. Give us all you've got. I am ready and I am pumped. Let's go. With that said, let's take a second here to reflect on some of our favorite Jason Blundell memories from over the years. Some of these clips were suggested by my members on my channel who hit the join button, so thanks to them. I'm gonna miss you, Jason. Run the tape.
Marker.
Yeah, you're not going to get anything out of me.
Nothing.
No.
Nothing at all.
Nope.
As the curtains are coming to a close, I suppose the kind of final message I would say is, you know, first of all, a huge kind of heartfelt thank you to each and every member out there. All of their opinions and their passion mean the world to me, and I know to the team.
When we started off, I mean, the first maps that I did was Derice, the original, back in World of War. Let's set these questions up, let's set these possibilities up.
Our fan base is so kind of good at training our zombies around. We need something every so often to kind of mix it up and to kind of break the flow. And again, part of my job is to hurt people and ultimately kill them. I think this is a good point to go off script a little bit. This is a personal thank you from me to you.
I truly describe it as a love letter from Treyarch to the community. That's how we've treated it. The fog may be rolling back in. Now with more fog. No, I'm just kidding.
The smug smile it says it all.
So I wouldn't use the word smug. I would say kind of comforting
knowing,
and supporting.
maybe.
Knowing, yes.
You can have a little paddle there at the front.
Right.
And then also later on kind of do some deep sea diving.
It's lightning round time.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
Yes.
You want to zip through
Let's do it
them?
really fast.
What if you make a mistake?
I will not make a mistake.
Is Richter from the Bald Man in the First Strike poster?
No.
What? Is that a joke? It's a joke.
No, pass.
What? With the man himself, Jason B. Jason over here.
Wipies.
Because they make honey?
I figure we start off with something quite relaxed.
Okay.
Just pretty chilled out.
What's the end of the story?
Yeah, how's it end?
Pass. You're not going to get a timeline from me at this point.
Oh, God. Give it a few months, yeah?
Give it some time.
Give it some time. For sure. And completely happily so.
I will make that deal.
The team have never let me down in any endeavour we've done over the past 10 years for zombies, and it kind of chokes me up to kind of think about that, because they rocked and rolled through the whole thing, which each and every one of them can be incredibly proud of.